Hello and welcome to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. I am your host, Sandy Lowres, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast is proudly brought to us by WB40, Women Beyond 40, a platform and magazine for women 40, 50, 60 and beyond who want to be seen. You can check us out at wb40.com. Before we begin this podcast today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which this podcast is recorded. And in my case, that is the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nations. I would like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I would also like to acknowledge their incredible history of storytelling. Today in the podcast, I am thrilled to be chatting with a vibrant, charismatic woman. Her name is Juls Rollnik, and Juls has been through some extraordinary experiences. She has written a book which is called Secrets of a Superhost, How to Become an Airbnb Rockstar. So if you're thinking about starting an Airbnb, this is the book you need to have. But this book is also part memoir. And what led Juls to having a career in the Airbnb space was going through quite a traumatic experience. You won't want to miss this. Juls has, gone through trauma, has come out the other side, has built an extraordinary career and is very passionate about helping other women to gain financial security. She's done everything from Airbnb to making it to base camp at Mount Everest. Please welcome to the podcast, Juls Rollnik.
Hey there. When Sandy's not interviewing kick-ass women, she's hanging out with me at Alex the Seal, a podcast about music and nostalgia. I'm Jo Pybus, and each episode, Sandy and I talk about all the songs that got us hooked up, knocked up, and broken up. Do yourself a favour and search Alex the Seal on your podcast app. Love you, Molly.
Hello and welcome to the Confessional. Juls, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
You look gorgeous. I'm loving this pop of green.
Yes, it's my favourite colour too. So it's everywhere at the moment.
Isn't it? Yeah. It matches your eyes.
Oh, thank you. I love it. I could talk to you all day.
Well, I'm so happy that you joined me today on the Good Girl Confessional. Confessions, of course, are always optional, but we do love a few. And
yes.
Of which I'm sure you've got a few.
I do.
First of all, congratulations on your incredible new book, which is Secrets of a Superhost, How to Become an Airbnb Rockstar.
Thank you, my dear. Yes, speaking of confessionals.
Speaking of confessionals. Because I love this book because it really is part memoir and part like tips from an expert. It's really quite beautiful. And man, have you had the journey.
And that's only one part of my life. I've had many journeys, but yes. It's not a bad story.
So it's pretty amazing to be a bit of a rock star in the Airbnb world. And
I still can't get used to that. But, I've had a couple of guests call me that, and I just thought, look, it'd be so remiss of me not to add that in because it's just hilarious, isn't it?
No, I agree. I love it. I love a rock star. And look, I think you have to own it because the reality is that you are seriously, in the Airbnb world, you're at the top of your game. You're a consistent, what they call superhost. But before we get into that world, I really wanted to start with how you ended up in the world of Airbnb. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Okay, well, we have to go back to the start of sort of where it began, and that was back in 2013. My husband, Adam, had just been diagnosed with bowel cancer. Now, he is a really fit guy, so, when he walked out and said, "Oh, I've got some news, I've got cancer," I kind of went, "What?" I'm sitting there enjoying my cup of coffee, enjoying the sunshine, and then I went, "Oh my God." So the scary thing was it had progressed to the liver. So once it goes into the liver, you're pretty much up shit creek without a paddle. Oh, excuse me, am I allowed to?
No, you're allowed to swear on this podcast. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was sort of looking down the barrel because I was 44. I hadn't had a real job, whatever you want to call that, for many years. I had two young kids, and yeah, I knew I couldn't afford the mortgage. And like a lot of couples living day to day, week to week. So, funnily enough, I was sitting at home staring into the abyss, as you do when you sort of had a bomb being dropped on you. And this book sort of fell out of the bookshelf, and it was a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So a lot of your viewers might know him, might not know him, but that book was written years ago, many, many years ago. And reading his book, I came across his wife, Kim Kiyosaki, who had written this book called Rich Woman, and I went, that it sort of was fortuitous, it just sort of all sort of happened at the right time. And funnily enough, Adam had said to me, my husband Adam had said to me, look, I know someone who's bought a property and running it on Airbnb. She's doing so well. And he said, Jules, he said, you would be fantastic as an Airbnb host. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm not sure about that. But I kind of thought, well, I need to, after reading this book, Rich Woman, I realized, property could be something that, could be good for me, especially if Adam carks it. And so it was that's sort of how my journey with Airbnb started, because I had to find a property first and foremost. So I sort of had to educate myself. And I do stress to people, that's one of my 3 tips, is you need to educate and research. So yeah, I sort of started researching, going to property seminars and so forth. And yeah, just sort of did all my homework and then worked out what I wanted, and was a 1-bedroom apartment, and worked out that the city was quite viable because it was good cash flow. In any CBD is quite good for Airbnb. So yeah, it sort of started from there, and that was the beginning of it. So bought an apartment and went from there. And
so in the middle of this kind of traumatic experience, this traumatic news for your husband, you of course must have been fretting, and great story, because you're thinking, how am I going to support my kids? How am I going to keep my kids in school? How am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to do all of these things? And I think for a lot of women in our demographic especially, this is such a common story where, the male partner or one partner goes out and works and is the major breadwinner, and the other partner stays at home and takes care of the kids, and sort of like doesn't really think too much about long term, what does that mean for me in terms of a career, in terms of being able to make money, in terms of being able to support a family. And a lot of women, of course, find themselves single for a number of reasons. Of course, no one ever expects to get news, say that, oh, my husband's got cancer, and looking down the barrel of a not so good diagnosis. So that was a pretty gutsy, ballsy thing for you to be doing. How were you coping at that time, though, with a husband who's not well and goes through treatment, and kids?
Yeah, look, it was tough because I've sort of been quite a survivor most of my life. I lost my mother very young. I lost a sister young. My father passed away. In 1 year, I had 4. You know that movie, 4 Weddings and a Funeral? Well, I had four funerals and a wedding, and I've had to sort of do a lot myself. So at the time, it was really challenging because it was just me. I didn't have any support. I was on my own. I hit the bottle, as you do. That was a coping mechanism at the time. You up the ante at times like this. And, alcohol was always it was something that it was a crutch for me because of all the trauma I've had in my life. Was something that, and my father was an alcoholic. So it was something that I always sort of latched onto. So wasn't doing it very well. I was sort of getting through, and I was always a great mum. And I know a lot of women don't like to, we're always putting ourselves down. And for many years I did put myself down, but because, I was always, my kids came first, I was able to get out of bed and still function. And, they're amazing rock stars themselves, my kids, and are proud of me and so forth. But at the time, it was bloody tough. But and I thought I've got to do something. And often it's that when you have your back against the wall And I mean, Adam was a lawyer at the time, barrister, and or a lawyer. God, I've got to go back now. It was a few years, but you know, we'd worked really hard. I put him through law school back in the day, and happily so, because I knew he was a sure bet. I knew he was a good one, and you know, it was like, well, if he doesn't make it, I really don't have anything. So it was really one of those moments. And when I picked up that book and read it, and I just love how that happens in life. You know, things happen. What do they say when the student's ready, the teacher will appear? Well, that's certainly been in my life. So yeah, that's sort of where I was at. But yeah, I had many nights where I was in a fetal position, crying my eyes out. I get emotional now thinking about it. But yeah, it was tough, but we got through.
Yeah, you did. And thank you so much for your honesty with all of that and for sharing that with us, because I know it is a really, really tough thing to relive and to go through. And look, you know, how is Adam now? And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Adam's fantastic. And in fact, he was one of those guys, you know, very proud. And even at the time when he had cancer, he didn't really want me to tell anyone. So I had to sort of go through it really just sort of soldiering on and not really talking much about it to people. But he's doing fantastic now. He's, you know, he had the all clear for some years, and he said recently, you know, cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it really changed us, because we were sort of, you know, bordering on probably separating before cancer. I think too, when you've been through so much as a couple and hard times, and even in general, I mean, everybody goes through hard times when you're in a relationship, you know. I don't know anybody that goes through unscathed, but it really brought us closer together. And yeah, we're a absolutely formidable team now. So yeah, so thank you, you know, thank you, Kat. I don't say that lightly either, by the way. I wish it hadn't happened, but it didn't, you know. It was positives that came out of it.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? So we had she's a friend of mine now, a beautiful woman on the podcast. She's in America, Kimberly, and she was talking about, so she had rectal and colon cancer and now has an ostomy, and she's a huge advocate for people living with ostomies. But she was saying that she takes so much of that cancer journey as a gift for what it gave her, and the focus that it just changed her focus on life, her family, her children, her partner, her friends, and everybody. And it just, yeah, she said that she gained so much out of the experience that was actually positive, which was quite an extraordinary thing to say, but you're saying exactly the same thing.
Well, it's true. And I think my whole life I've always seen that, or for me, I can only speak from my own experience, but everything I've gone through where it's like you're in the depths of Mordor and you think you just can't get out, and it's really hideous. And you know, as I said before, you know, alcohol was my friend for many, many years in those dark times. But what often happens is in those times, that is when the gifts appear, and when you come out of the darkness, that's really often when you gain your strength. And you know, people, I know it's easy to say, but I really believe that. I really believe when you go through such hard times, and I'm not just talking, you know, a blip here and there, I'm talking really dark times, that's when, you know, you find the jewels in the crown. And, you know, the old saying, there's always the darkness before the dawn. But yeah, I think that's true. And I absolutely agree with, sorry, what was that gorgeous lady's name? Kimberly,
Yeah.
Yes. Sisters in arms.
Sisters in arms, I tell you. It's really, I'm always struck by the extraordinary resilience of women, because although I understand that it was Adam's cancer journey, really for you it was about holding everything together as women do, holding together the family unit, caring for him, caring for your kids, caring about their mental well-being while their father's not 100% well. And, you know, this is what women do, and we tend to take it in our stride, don't we?
We sure do. We sure do. And, you know, as I said before, we often beat ourselves up thinking we're doing a terrible job, and in fact, we're holding it together for everybody. And, that really strikes a chord with me when, I think of women and I think we are such strong people, I often think, and I love men and I'm not taking anything away from men, but I think, we are the stronger sex. And, it's, and we prove it time and time again.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I'm very lucky that, I get to speak to so many amazing women on this podcast. And that theme always comes through, just how strong and tough and resilient women can be when thrown in the face of adversity.
Well, it's interesting you say that because in my book, I talk about my Everest base camp journey. And that was one that I kind of thought was going to be for Adam and the kids. And I was always the weak link. My kids would always say, "Oh, Mum, you can't." I used to run and swim and do stuff like that, but climbing a mountain, and I used to always struggle in heat, even though we did it in freezing cold temperatures. But in fact, that trip was about me, because I not only saw what a strong woman I was, and I was one of the strongest mentally out of 16 of us, the group of 16, but even Adam looked at me through different eyes, because I didn't get sick. I was sort of comforting everyone, because often when you do something like that, it's age. It's not the physical, it's the mental that gets you through. And Adam kind of saw me through new eyes and was like, "Wow, you're amazing." And my kids were like, "Oh, Mum, Ninja Mum," that's what they were calling me. And it was really mind blowing, thinking, "Oh, I bought this trip for, Adam and the kids," and really it was all about me. So what I got out of it, what I learned, and how I kind of connected with the mountain, and I think I just saw who I really was, and that just was mind blowing. And after that journey, it just, my own sort of what I felt about myself and my courage and so forth, it just went sort of came straight out of my soul, and just
I love it so much. I love it. I think you kind of just brushed over this, but let's really just
yes, let's brush over it. I like the word.
Brushed over that like it was nothing. So you and your husband and your children actually climbed to base camp at Mount Everest. Now, for those who don't know, I think a lot of people tend to think base camp somehow is down the bottom, but it really isn't. Tell everybody, how far do you have to climb to get to base camp?
Okay, well, it's interesting. I've got this this beanie that I think it's 5,385 something above sea level. So I think it's, you arrive into Lukla, which is the little airport, which, oh my God, that's a nightmare in itself. I think that's it. Oh, look, I'm going to.
It's high.
Let's say it's 2,000 or 3,000, 2,000 or something. So you're going up really high, and it's like, it was interesting because my kids, obviously, they were 13 and 16 and had absolutely no idea where we were going, or we're going. They've got no idea. So that was interesting itself, but they were phenomenal. So so I decided, because when Adam had finished his chemo, a couple of months later, they thought it had come back and gone into the bones, which once it's in the bones, you pretty much, it's good night, Irene. And that was a scare. And then I saw, because we're kind of a bit out there anyway, we're adventurers and do sort of crazy things, which is fun as well, keeps you young. And I saw this ad for, this 16-day trek to base camp for some good price. And it wasn't long after some earthquake or something happened there. And in all my wisdom, I just said, that'll be so good. If anything happens to Adam, that's sort of going to be a trip of a lifetime for us that we can remember. And, it's funny how you start these things off. And I really thought Adam was going to be like, blown away by it. And in fact, when we did the trip, he was like looking for the, where's the, when we at night where you bunker down for the night, I thought it'd be like a nice little hut with some, a warm fire and a red wine. And I said, I don't think so. But it was pretty incredible, I must say. And we, we went in January, which is winter, but school holidays, and Adam sort of, that's the time we go away. And it was like minus 26 degrees at night. So it was bloody cold, I have to tell you. But,
Wow, man.
yeah. And even what was mind blowing is my son, who's a photographer, and he was sort of really kick-started him off on that journey. But we were, when we hiking up the mountain, you'd come across a lot of the locals who would have these huge, big packs on their back. And what really struck me was one of the days, my son Alec and I were just walking, everyone's sort of walking along at their own pace, and there's 80, she must have been 80 years old or 85 years old, and she walked by, and she had this monstrous pack on her back. And, I was just absolutely blown away, thinking, here's a woman who's 85. She could have been 90. They're pretty old. They live quite old in Nepal. But yeah, it just blew my mind. I thought, what a rock star.
What a rock star.
Here she is going up that mountain, as you do, and just getting on with it.
It's incredible, isn't it? And
yes.
And just proof, I mean, my whole platform, WB40, Women Beyond 40, and the Good Girl Confessional podcast, of course, is built on exactly that women, regardless of age, are capable of extraordinary things in their day-to-day life. And, it's women, inadvertently every day make this massive impact on the world. And I love that through this platform, people are seeing that women in midlife and beyond can be vibrant, incredible, do amazing things, go on adventures, create businesses, whatever it is that they're doing. It's pretty phenomenal, isn't it?
Oh, look, it is. And, I say, I'm just getting started, I just recently did an own a build project, which is, I'm 51 or something, thrown into this own a builder project, which is huge. If anybody out there has done an own a build, they're going to be nodding their head going, yes, don't do it. Some people say, oh, should I own a build? I go, no, don't do it. And I'm 51, I'm doing all these other things. I'm just getting started. And it's like I'm 53. Well, I was 51. I'm 53 now. But age is nothing. Age is, it's a mindset. And, I have 2-minute cold showers every day. I do crazy things like that. But I love it. It just gives me it keeps me inspired. And I just think, oh, yeah, I've always been that sort of person that anything's possible. I've got that sort of Walt Disney, like, okay, I kind of think when I'm 80, I'm going to be doing this, and this. And it's awesome. I love that mindset. And, I think there has to be more of it, ladies.
Yes, I love that. My partner's big on, he loves a hot sauna and then a freezing cold shower.
Yes,
he's right
I like him.
So they're good for him.
Not for you, my dear.
I do it a couple of times a week, actually, while I'm in the shower. I tend to have a shower, wash my hair, do whatever, and then turn the hot water off and just let the cold water run for a couple of minutes. I think it's actually quite good for you.
It's good for the skin. That's right, because people say to me, oh, you look great. And I go, oh, it's my cold shower. I said, but my tip is, when you have the hot, turn it on just for 30 seconds on your face cold, and that's the key.
It's actually really good for you. Yeah. I used to see, people, like models, etc., used to swear by putting their whole face in a bowl of iced water. And I used to think you're nuts, but I think actually it is very good for you.
It does sound nuts, doesn't it?
It does sound kind of nuts, doesn't it? Hey, look, I think it's easier. Just turn the hot water off in the shower.
Yes, I agree. I love it.
Okay, so I go all over the place, but I want to come back to this for a minute, this beautiful book. So let's talk about how the journey into Airbnb started and how you became the rock star in it. Because we now know that it was out of necessity, really. You were looking for something you could do to generate some income.
Yes, it was. So, and I absolutely love how often, when you fall into things, you don't know you've got hidden talents. So it's not often that you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna become. I'll use my situation as an example. I'm going to become an Airbnb host and I'm going to do this and that. It wasn't that at all. It's because I got thrown into it, I started to discover talents that I had. And I think that's, a lot of people don't think like that because they think, oh, I'm not very good at interior design, or oh, I don't know how to do it. Well, I didn't know it. I wasn't very good at it either until I had to be. So, that's the wonderful thing about, my situation, or you often don't know that you've got hidden talents. So now I've veered right off that question, but as I do, I'm a Gemini, so I tend to go all over the place. Sorry, Sandy.
No, that's all right. Go for it. I love it. This is when sometimes, I love, like, this is the whole thing about the podcast is very conversational. So it's like having a conversation over coffee with a friend. It's brilliant.
I know. So now, what was the question again? I've forgotten. Oh God. Yeah.
So let's talk about the Melbourne apartment that started it all. Okay.
So I found my little apartment, and so do you want to know sort of? I've got a bit lost now.
That's
I've got a bit lost.
So you've read this book that says that wealthy women.
Yes. Oh yeah. Okay, gotcha.
So you've read the book, and you decide, hey, maybe this is something I can actually do.
Yes. Okay, cool. Okay. So I kind of had to work out, obviously I've gone to all these property seminars and that's all great. So I had to kind of narrow down what's going to suit me. So, and with the book, that's based on my 1-bedroom apartment. But a lot of the tips and techniques I talk about, you can take that across the board in anything you do. But for me, I had to work out what's going to suit me. And so I went out there, and it took me, didn't happen overnight. And that's what I say to people. These things take time. It took me about 6 months before I found a place. So I've got my little, ticked all the boxes, the requirements, like the village. Like I thought, okay, well, I've got to think about I want to buy an apartment. Where am I going to buy it? What's, close by? I need transport. I need shops. I need a cafe. I need all these little things. So these are really important things. So I found my apartment, bought it, and then I thought, okay, what do I do now? How do you Airbnb? So I'm like, I've got to find a course, and an Airbnb for dummies. And basically that's what I did. I wanted, because I knew just from when I started researching about Airbnb that reviews are your currency. You've got to have great reviews from the outset. So of course I thought, well, I've got to get prepared. So I did this little course, and then I actually did another course but I'm a bit, what's the word? A bit anal and a bit, I wanted to be over everything, but you really only need to do a little Airbnb course. And so I did this other course, and then, I sort of started to set it up. I learned how I learned things like, even when you're taking photos of your apartment, the way you take a photo is everything, because, if you do it a certain way, it can look really bad. So you need to make sure you have great photos. So all that sort of preparation of styling and photos and, writing the ad. I talk about all this in my book. So I know we've only got a certain amount of time, and I could go on forever and ever. But yeah, that's sort of how it got started. And one thing that was really, really important to me was making sure, what do I like? So I'd say, Jules, what do you like? What do you like? So I liked certain things, and I wanted to make sure that my guests had that, but I really wanted them to want for nothing, to be kings and queens for the trip. I wanted to give them an experience. And I kind of did that. I made sure I did that, and I did. So, and that's sort of where it started. And because, like, from the outset, the first review was outstanding, and I had just through the whole time I did Airbnb, the reviews were outstanding. So, but for me, what was important, and I knew this, you had to get the best reviews possible from the outset, and that's what we did. So that's the one thing you want, because one bad review can tank you, and you don't want that.
No, you don't want that.
Everybody will look at you. Get onto Airbnb, and you'll go, okay, they're nice photos, or oh, that's nice. But most people go straight to the reviews. And, it's interesting because I was only talking to somebody about this the other day. You might have you've got your Airbnb, and some Joe Blogs down the road's got an Airbnb similar to you and looks similar and doing all the same things, but your reviews are outstanding. So you can afford to have it at $50, bit more, $50 or $20 or whatever you want it more expensive, because 9 times out of 10, those people will come to your Airbnb because of the reviews.
Wow. I love too that you talked about for this Melbourne apartment that you wanted to get like a really, really good bed, and you wanted really great linen.
I love that you brought that up, because when I was writing the book, actually, because everything's about 3. I love 3s, and I've got the 3 pillars, and absolutely without a shadow of a doubt. And it's a funny story, because at the time when I was looking for my Airbnb bed, I was having difficulties at home with my own bed. So, I'd gone through on this huge journey with buying a bed for home. And I think I had to get the bed changed over 5 times before we found the right bed, that I thought, I'm a bloody expert on buying beds now. And what I found was, with a bed, that's the one thing everybody is going to do, is sleep at your Airbnb. And if you don't have a bed and like good pillows and good linen, or comfortable, nice, soft linen, people are not going to be happy if they don't get a good night's sleep. And that is absolute, probably the number one thing I will say. The mattress doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to feel kind of like, oh yeah, this is a decent mattress. And as I said, I then leapfrog into, what's the second thing? Pillow. Now come on. I mean, my sister travels with her pillow everywhere, even overseas, because how many times do you stay somewhere and the pillows? I mean, that's what I'm going to get really passionate now, but I'm really passionate about this. You've got to bloody get a good pillow, and even like the sheets, and because this is a sort of one-time investment. You invest in some decent pillows, some nice linen, some soft towels. Bang, bada bing. They last, and they will make a difference with your reviews. And of course, my other pillar was the heating and cooling. That's absolutely, get that right. Have some air conditioning or heating, good heating, and you'll be laughing. But yeah, definitely the bed. People, I'm going to say it again, take that away. You've got to get a good bed and a decent pillow and some linen, and you'll be laughing, because I know this. Because, how many times people would say, oh, my God, Jules, I love you. But people would actually ask me, where did you buy your bed? Because I'm going to buy it, and the pillows. And it was like, and it's all tax deductible. There you go. I'm like an advert, and it's tax deductible. There you go.
Well, I wanted to raise it because you can tell how passionate you are about it in the book. But also, too, who doesn't love some really good quality sheets and a really great pillow? Seriously.
Exactly. And the thing is too, as I said, you only need two sets. They last for years. It's not like you're buying, because often if you buy really, and I don't mean really expensive, I just want to get that across. But you only have to buy a couple of pairs of, a couple of sheet sets and so forth, and a doona and whatnot, and you're laughing. But that is the number one thing. And everybody, I'm sure everybody stayed at Airbnbs, they'll be nodding their head going, I agree.
Yeah.
So, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very true. And the thing is too, that I guess for people staying in an Airbnb, I mean, people stay in Airbnbs for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's for work, sometimes it's for pleasure. But I think when you're away on a holiday or a little getaway or a mini break or a weekend or whatever it may be, that you don't want to really have to think about it. You want to walk into that place and, as you say, have a really good night's sleep and not be fretting about, where's the pillow, or why is this pillow so crap, or whatever it may be. But you've put a lot of detail into your apartment, a lot of detail. So not just the bed.
Not just the bed. But, I did, and that's me. I'm a bit kind of like that. And somebody did point it out to me the other day that, Jules, you are a detail person. I said, true. I said, but the one thing, and it's funny because when I first went into Airbnb, Adam said, Jules, you will be, and these are his words, I've got to remember them now. He said, you'll be an amazing Airbnb host because you love people, you're a great communicator, because that's a big one, communication, and you have such a generosity of spirit with people. So for me, I really wanted people to feel like they just walk into my Airbnb and they don't want for anything. And when I say you don't want for anything, you don't need to go and do all the crazy nuts things I do. You can pick out 2 or 3 things that, like one, I love magazines. So, I'd put a few magazines out and I'd cater for the boys too, the boys and the girls. So, I mean, how nice you walk in, sit down, you've got some fresh magazines, new magazines, and then you churn them out and, get some new ones in and so forth. Just the little things that make you it makes you feel good. And, I remember seeing an interview with Oprah, and I love this. She talked about, she'd interviewed like 30,000 people in her life, lifetime or whatnot. And all people would really want to know is how they did, whether you're the president of the United States or, a sociopath or whoever. She interviewed all sorts of people, but they all wanted to know how they did. And I remember thinking, all people want to know, or all people want is to be heard. They want to be heard. And that's where the communication is really important. But they want to know that you care. Really? And when you're going on a holiday or wherever you're going, you just want to walk in and have to want for nothing. And as an Airbnb host, to me, it was like home away from home. And that is what you want to give people. And as I said, you can just do a couple of things. Really, people are visual. So if they see one thing like a bottle of wine, it doesn't have to, a bottle of wine or some chocolates or coffee or magazines or some bloody thing, it speaks volumes.
Well, it just shows that, I care about your experience and
That's
I want
right.
you to feel relaxed and I want you to feel at home, whether it's for one night or a week or however long people stay.
Look, you do, because I remember on one myself, I went to America. My sister lives in America, and I was staying in Boston, and I was staying at this little apartment. And I walked in, and I was blown away by the fact that there was nothing there. Like he didn't have. There wasn't even. There was one glass, I think, a knife and fork, but there was nothing there. It was really bad, and Boston rains a lot. Certainly where I was, it was raining a lot. And I had just arrived from this long haul flight, and I'm in this apartment that was, less than, and didn't even have an umbrella. I had to go and buy, tea and coffee. I wanted to have a cup of tea when I got there so I could just relax. And I'm running up the street and I'm in, I didn't have an umbrella or anything. I was like, really I was upset because I thought the Airbnb host has forgotten the most important thing, me, the guest. It was all good sort of, insight for myself to see what a good host is, or a great host and a not so great host, because and it's those little things that are going to piss people off no end. Believe you me, it's those little things. So yeah, that was interesting.
I think that's really true, because I think, my experience with Airbnbs has mostly been positive, but not always. Not always.
Yes, good, yes. There's always one or two in there.
Not always, but mostly. And so I will say a couple of standouts that I remember is like country Victoria, and as you say, winter, freezing cold. It was a lovely little place, but they had put like a range of gumboots at the back door and umbrellas and
gorgeous
raincoats hanging on these beautiful sort of hooks, like a little farmhouse, right? It was just, but to me, I was just like, wow, I would never have even thought to bring gumboots. But it was like a little farmhouse stay, and you kind of go, that makes total sense. And, I did pull on a pair of the Gumbies and,
I love it. Oh, that is gold. You've just warmed my heart. You've really warmed my heart.
Right? But it stayed with me, and has always stayed with me, because I thought, wow, it's felt to me like, like almost like they wanted to give you a warm hug. It felt
Yes.
like, oh, you're part of our family, to see the gumboots lined up and to see that oh my God, I didn't even think to bring a raincoat, but there's one there. And
That's
right?
it. That's
Yeah.
it.
Such a
That's
yeah.
absolutely gold.
Such a lovely experience. And another one was, beach stays, staying at Airbnb, and it's sort of close to the beach. But that simple things, like they had like lots of beach towels piled up, like like help yourself. And, just things like that. Like you weren't looking around going, oh shit, I've got to bring a beach towel. You didn't have to worry about it. It was there. And I kind of think it's the small things that matter.
It's the small things, it's thoughtful. And, I
Yeah.
mean, even you telling that story, I'm getting all warm and fuzzy because I'm feeling it. You're feeling it. You feel it in your soul. You're like, oh, that's just beautiful. And
Yeah.
that's all we want. That's all any of us want, is to be cared for, especially when you're talking an Airbnb or any kind of a holiday accommodation. You want to
Yeah.
be thought of. But I mean, I think that's across the board anyway. So.
No, I agree. I do. And one thing I really like, I mean, this is just me personally as a customer, is I do love when you go away and you're staying in a bit of an Airbnb or any holiday accommodation, and there's like brochures or there's things, like what am I going to do around here? What's around here? And as you so thoughtfully said before, you looked for a place where there was transport, where there was a cafe, where there were shops, where there were things that people could do. Obviously yours is Melbourne CBD, so there's so much people can do. But, when you're visiting a new city or you're visiting a new place, it's really nice. I was in San Francisco and for my niece's wedding, and she had sort of said, recommended Airbnb places. And, just to walk into a brand new city, but to find brochures and things and go, oh, you could do this, or this is where you can get the transport, or, have you been on this bus, or have you, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You just kind of go, oh, there's a starting point. This is so great.
It's so true. And I would always, for my guests, I'd send them when, they first made contact, I'd always send them like a message with all the things you can do. And I always thought ahead. So I used to think, I want to prepare something for my guests. And I had all the brochures and that, that like you tell them all the things you can do. But I loved that I would have it all ready for them even before they set foot in whether, it's Melbourne in my case, but whether it was San Francisco or, and I'd make sure I'd let them know all the some wonderful restaurants they can go to and that were really special and everybody loved, or things to do that, even in country Victoria, you might want to get on a bus, and because a lot of people used to love, for some reason, going down the Great Ocean Road. So great, that's what people want. So I think helping people in that sort of telling them what they can do, and it just shows you care. Going back to that care factor, it's lovely, and it makes you feel great.
Yeah, it is really lovely, isn't it? And I think you can tell the Airbnb hosts who go the extra mile. You can
The
always
extra mile.
the extra mile. And this is why, though, you became a Superhost. So when we talk about Superhost, explain to everyone who's not familiar with Airbnb what that really means.
Okay, well, you start off as a host with Airbnb, and then it's funny, every 3 months you get sort of graded to see if you qualify for being a Superhost. And a couple of things to become a Superhost. Well, reviews. You've got to have, I think it's 4.9. I can't remember offhand the stats, but it's pretty high. You've got to have a pretty high standard of your reviews. So that's why I always go back to reviews, because if you get outstanding reviews each and every time, you're winning and you're going to get Superhost status. But so people grade you on your service, because it's not only the apartment, the Airbnb. I've got to have it the same in the apartment. But also your services, the cleaning, all that. You've sort of got a grading system. And if you qualify for your outstanding service and so forth, if you fit the bill, then you become a Superhost, which is great. And I'm really proud to say that the first time the Superhost grading, because I think I said, sorry if I haven't, was 4 times. No, hang on. I always get this confused. Every 3 months, and that's 4 times a year, you have to qualify to retain your Superhost status. So, and I think I was Superhost from day one, pretty much to when I finished my Airbnb days. But also, what was incredible was I was invited to be part of the inaugural Air Plus. So that's even above the Superhost status. So I thought, I was like, wow. Even then, I was like, really? Do they really want? Are they inviting me to be part of that? I was blown away. I was like, really? Oh, so that was amazing in itself to become an Air Plus host, because that's above a Superhost. That's like absolute top of the pops. So, and I think it's really good that you know you get sort of reviewed every 3 months to see if you're going to keep your Superhost status, because it keeps you on your toes. Um,
I
yeah.
love that. I think it's fantastic.
Mm,
And now, of
mm,
course, not only have you
mm.
written the book, but you constantly do get asked to talk about your experiences and to guide other people who are thinking about walking into the world of Airbnb. And as you
Yes.
say, interestingly for you, you then went from Airbnb queen to
I love you, Sandy. God, I love you.
Airbnb queen. You can use that anytime, Jules. And
Yeah.
Airbnb queen. Two, being, as you said, an owner builder, which is a massive project to take on. So tell us about that journey, because, as you said, anybody else who's been an owner builder is no doubt out there shaking their head going, "Ooh, why?"
Yes, yes. I don't do things in halves. So basically, when we bought the apartment and that was doing really well, we kind of got the bug and we were like, I think we want to start investing in property. And when I read that book, Rich Woman, all those, years ago, so to speak, she talks a lot about property. And as a woman, I knew that if Adam got sick again, he might die. So I always had in the back of my mind, I want to become financially independent. So basically, yeah, we and Adam and I both loved property. So we started down that path of property investing. So we've owned property now, and then the owner builder project I sort of fell into. Another thing, back against the wall, fall into it. But that was absolutely incredible, and I created this amazing and beautiful, amazing home, and I'm just so proud of her, because it's a really tough job being an owner builder with no experience. And then, from that, I'm just about to leapfrog into commercial property investing. And, as you talked about, giving these wonderful talks, and I'm sort of, it's even developed into, I'm quite passionate about helping women become financially independent, because, I know from my own experience back all those years ago, it really opened my eyes. And, it's the sad thing that often this happens, because you don't really get your eyes opened until things like this happen. And I know, because in one of my former lives, which it's sort of still hanging around, is I'm an astrologer. And I used to have clients come to me for readings. And I remember there were older women who'd come for readings in their 70s. And, it really, at the time, I remember it sort of struck a chord, but I sort of went, that's interesting, because some of these women their husbands had died, so they're in their 70s, their husbands had died, left them with a lot of debt. Their husbands had left them for other women, and they weren't. Their husbands were running the bank accounts. They got no money, so they're in their 70s. They've lost their homes. They're renting, or barely renting. Some of them were in commission style places where once they had a nice life. And through my journey, it really got me thinking about how that is still going on. And it's not that, I mean, I really didn't have my finger on the pulse either, but it just highlighted to me that this is so important, and we all know somebody who is, I'm sure we all know someone, or we know someone who knows someone, that, there is an older person who is struggling. And so that's something that, what's come out of this journey for me is that, okay, I've had my back against the wall and all this sort of stuff, but it doesn't have to be that way. And even young women, we're amazing, and we've come so far, but there's still that, and I don't know if it's that kind of it's just how we're inbuilt. But, you can have a successful career, but then you can, as soon as you get married, you can sort of lose yourself because, you become a mum and hand everything over to the man. And, I think yeah, I just feel quite passionate about people hearing my story because, look at me now and I'm only getting started, ladies.
I love that. I love that. And as a fellow 53-year-old, I think that your wisdom is so incredible. And you're right. Your back was against the wall. You're pushed into a corner. And I think, as you so rightly said, sometimes what that does is catapult us into action. And in your case, it absolutely did. So not only did you take a massive risk to buy an apartment by, refinancing your own house, but it worked. It worked, and it worked brilliantly. And, as you said, you became such a rock star in the world of Airbnb, and how lovely now that you're able to give that wisdom to other people and share how you did it, what's really important to get there. And now that it's, as you said, it's ignited a passion in you to help other women to become financially independent as well.
Yeah, and I think what's nice is that, when I remember when I was young and going through difficult times, and I was pretty much alone, and I used to think, I wish there was just someone, that I could sort of, if there was a mentor or someone who I could look up to, and I remember thinking if I, in my life, I'd like to pay it forward. And I think that, I didn't want to get into Airbnb. I was like, oh no, I can't do any of that. I didn't want to do half the things I've done. But I have, and it's opened my eyes that I can help people. I'm just an ordinary Jules, just little old me. That's but through this journey, I uncovered talents. Bloody strong. Taking on the men. Doing all these incredible things, and I believe that I want to share that with people and show that they can bloody too. And you can, believe you me, you really can. You don't know what you're made of until you're in it. And, it's fantastic. So there you go.
Well, congratulations to you on what has really become an extraordinary career. But through that too, some extraordinary life moments and coming out, walking out of the fire, rising like a phoenix, as I like to say, through really traumatic times to build something that burns even brighter. So congratulations to you, Jules. I think you're amazing.
Oh, thank you, Maddie. I think you're amazing too.
Oh, thank you. And I will say, fellow Melbourne girls, that hopefully we'll get to meet in person soon.
Yes.
I am in love with this book. I think, as I said, it is not just a book about how to set up an Airbnb. It is part memoir. And through it, though, you have given some extraordinary, brilliant, hard-won wisdom in this book for anybody who is contemplating, any woman who's out there listening, or guys, because we do have male listeners, who is out there thinking about maybe starting an Airbnb. This is the book to get. Jump on it. You can get it. This is available now, and I will put up the links in our show notes to where people can buy this book, Jules. It is fantastic. It is called Secrets of a Superhost, How to Become an Airbnb Rockstar.
Oh, thanks, Sandy. Thank you so much.
And rockstar you are. It's been an absolute delight, Jules. I'm so thrilled that you came into the confessional today.
Oh, thank you, my love. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've made my day.
You've made my day, and congratulations on all that you're doing.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Good Girl Confessional podcast. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is brought to you by WB40, Women Beyond 40 magazine. Available now at WB40.com. The Good Girl Confessional podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to quality podcasts. We're also now available on YouTube. We chat with really interesting women about their hard-won wisdom, but it really helps us if you can subscribe, like, and share the podcast. Thanks so much for your support. Bye for now.